motion to approve? I'll move the agenda.
Second.
I had a request before council that we have a change in order. And I wanted to put that forward first before.
Yes, I'd like to actually move that we change the order of the agenda so that citizen comments under number 7 are moved until after the public hearings, as I have a somewhat of a family emergency and will not be able to stay late to be able to vote on our public hearings.
So there was actually more than one counselor who asked me for a change.
And I have a big project that I have to get done tonight and early throughout the morning, so I need to leave early.
So we're not going to be removing the citizen comment time. We're just going to be changing it so that we are addressing all of the work of council before our two counselors that have to leave early have to leave. Does anyone have a problem with the request to move item number 7, citizen comments, to 8 and switch it with public hearings? Does anyone have a problem with that?
No.
Okay, so that is the way the agenda will now read. Can I have a new motion for the new agenda?
I'll motion to approve the agenda as amended.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Thank you, council. Consent agenda. Approval of January 5th, 2016 City Council meeting minutes. Resolution 2016-002, extending the term of franchise agreement between City of Sherwood and Comcast. Do I have a motion to approve consent?
I motion we approve.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries. Presentation. Proclamation, January 2016 as School Board Month. Sylvia, did you have something for me to read on this?
No, Mayor, I put it in your mailbox.
Okay, so Councilor Harris took the proclamation to our school board and read it on my behalf, which she did an awesome job of that. I'm sorry, Council President. I did say Council President, didn't I? This is new, so I'm still getting used to that. Thank you. And so we read our proclamation to declare it is School Board Month this month, January 2016. So I appreciate that, and thank you to our school board for all that they do for our city.
And Mayor, we'd be happy to go get a copy if you'd like to read that.
Okay,
Yeah,
that'd be great. And we're gonna continue on, and we can always return to that because it would be nice to read that proclamation for them. And we will now go to our public hearings. Resolution 2016-003, adjusting solid waste and recycling collection rates. Joe Ball.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mayor and Council. Chris Bell, our consultant, is going to come up and do the bulk of this presentation. But this resolution that is in front of you tonight, you may recall we had a work session to talk about the review that Chris did of the financials for Pride Disposal. We look at rates usually every 2 or 3 years. Council has the task of evaluating our rates and considering a rate change. These rates have been in effect since January 1st, 2014. So it's been about 2 years since we last raised rates. Chris is going to go through, and I think for the benefit of the public, because I did get some calls about this topic, I think there is general interest whenever you're talking about raising rates or considering raising rates. That causes folks to be a little concerned. So I think it's important that he presents to the council, but also to the public, why we're here, how we got here, how he does his work, what our franchise requirements are, and then there is a public hearing where you can take testimony, and then we can go further from there. So do you have to read a statement now that you'd like to? Or?
I can read it after Chris does his presentation.
Okay. So Chris Bell is, he'll introduce himself. This is the second time that Chris has worked for the city under contract to evaluate this issue, and he'll go over his background. I think it's important the folks know his background and his expertise in this area. So, Unless there's any general questions for me, I'm going to have Chris start his presentation. Okay, go ahead.
Could you push your button so it turns green for us? Thank you.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Gall, and Mayor, members of the council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on behalf of your current solid waste collection system and the proposed rate adjustments. Again, as Mr. Gall was saying, this is the second time you've seen this, but for members of the audience, there's probably going to be some questions that hopefully we can answer during this brief presentation. As Mr. Gall was saying, I specialize in garbage. I am a CPA by trade and have been doing this since I've been doing this since 1999, I believe. Yeah, 1999. So I've been in it for close to 17 years, doing financials for garbage. And over the last 12 or 13 years, I've been working specifically for jurisdictions in looking at garbage rates, looking at the operational performance of garbage collection and recycling, both collection, operations, landfilling, MRFs, and operations. Most of the jurisdictions I work with are within the Portland metropolitan area, and there is a standard process that all these jurisdictions go through. Every one of them on an annual basis requests financial statements from their franchise hauler or their contracted hauler, and this report details the financial impacts, the operational results of operations over the prior year. It's a pretty detailed report, and what I do is I get that information as disposals adjust on a regular basis, and it's not adjusted by the hauler. It's adjusted, interestingly enough, by another jurisdiction called Metro. And so we look at those costs, we project them out, and we come up with a calculation of a garbage rate, which is what we've done here in this case. About your hauler, you guys are fortunate enough to have a local hauler who is pretty darn responsive. I've been reviewing financials for Pride Disposal for quite some time, and it is a family-run company who has a great operation and a well-known reputation throughout the region. What you have here in front of you is what is currently being collected in the city of Sherwood, as well as the number of customers, the tons collected. And again, this information that you're looking at came from 2014, and again, 2015 will be pretty similar. You do have some growth within the city of Sherwood. However, this has been a pretty constant operation. There's not a lot of changes that have happened over the last few years. Collection costs. As I said earlier, there's a couple costs that are out of Pride's hands, so to speak. One of them is the disposal cost. They do have to incur the disposal cost, and it is regulated by Metro. Recycling processing, which, if you haven't heard, over the last few years, the value of recycling has gone substantially down. This year alone, they're looking at a swing of about $55,000. In the past, the value of recycling that was set on a curbside did have value that was higher than the processing. Over the last few years, the value is not there. The market's not there. A lot of the materials that are being collected are being shipped overseas. And again, if we're not getting stuff on the back end and buying, toys or whatever from exporters or importing it, they're not buying our raw materials, and specifically mixed paper, plastics. And again, plastics, one of the problems with plastics is we've got oil prices around $28 a barrel, and the value of recyclable plastics has also plummeted. Yard debris processing right now is regulated substantially by DEQ, and those costs are going up. Labor is controlled under a collective labor agreement with the Teamsters 212. And the collection trucks, Pride has made a substantial investment over the last few years in compressed natural gas collection trucks for a couple of reasons. Number one, because they're a lot more energy efficient. The cost of the fuel is pretty consistent, and the repair and maintenance costs on the new compressed natural gas trucks are a lot lower than the newer diesels. And then the other piece too that's out of their hands is the franchise fee. And again, 5% of all the cash receipts that are collected by Pride within the city of Sherwood are remitted back to the city. One other thing that that Pride does, and they're one of the few haulers that do this. There are services they provide the city in kind. In this case, in 2014 and 2015, they've supplied the city or provided the city with close to $40,000 worth of disposal and hauling expenses, specifically aimed at some of the city buildings and the public works services. When I calculated the rates for a 10% return, and there's a range between 12% on the high end and 8% on the low end. And if that return falls underneath that 8%, then we readjust the rates. If it falls above the 12%, then we have a rate reduction to set it to 10%. Most jurisdictions within the Portland metropolitan area use this similar range, although there's some slight differences between when they set rates and how they set rates, but primarily most of them use this 10% margin with the 8 to 12% range. One thing to understand is the city doesn't guarantee a 10% rate of return. The city sets the rates at 10% of the expenses, and if expenses go up a lot more than anticipated, then the return is going to be less. And if things happen to turn around in the recycling market, things get a lot better, then they could earn more. But on the recycling market, the chances of that are happening are pretty low right now, given the economic situation. The other issue is City Council always sets and determines what the policy direction is on rates. And so, again, that's a policy decision that's up to the City Council members. With the proposed rates, the rates are very, very similar to a lot of the jurisdictions within this area. And you can see the proposed rates for the first column. The 32-gallon solid waste weekly rate is by far the most popular. About 72% of all residential customers have a 32-gallon can for service. You can see that Tualatin and Tigard have not adjusted the rates for a while. Beaverton just adjusted the rates, and they're pretty comparable to the 32-gallon can. Washington County is a little bit lower, and Lake Oswego just adjusted theirs to 26. So when you're comparing the different jurisdictions that surround Sherwood, the 32-gallon rate, again, it's the most common, and that's the one that we usually look at to determine whether the citizens are paying more or less than their peers. So the next steps, again, make this presentation to you. There is a vote coming up today, and what we're asking for is a yes or no, and if it is passed by the City Council, rates would become effective March 1st. This concludes my briefing. Are there any questions?
Thank you. Any questions, Council?
I have a question. I don't know that you can answer it. But everyone that I've talked to regarding rates in general keep asking me, my salary hasn't gone up, so why should I approve of a rate increase? And why should the utility get 10% profit when I barely make my expenses? So are you able to address that situation and why it's so critical for Pride to have an increase in fees?
Is it critical? Yes, it is. They're providing a service dictated by the city. The cities, and also one of the things too that they are under, not only regulated by the city but also by some of the guys of the Portland Metropolitan Service District as far as providing recycling services as well as the state. The rate of return, the 10%, and people look at that and get stuck on it and say, 10, I'd like to have 10%. I hear that all the time. Of that 10%, that's a pre-tax. So they, if they're a C Corp, they're going to pay about 36% taxes on that. So let's winnow that down from 10% to 7%. And then you got city tax, you got state tax. So that maybe narrows it a little bit down. You also have some reserves that they have to put in arrears. So, for example, recycling. When we set the rates last time, we assumed that there'd be some value in recycling. In fact, when we set the rates last time, they were making money on recycling, although not a lot. This year, they're going to be paying $55,000, a difference of about $100,000 over the last 2 years swing. If they're not making a margin on that, they're not going to have the money necessary to pay that difference in disposal and processing. And so their alternative would be to borrow. At some point when they have to borrow and they can't make money or they can't make a profit, then the service will either be cut, or we'll see what they've done in other jurisdictions where they will utilize trucks that are not so well maintained. I had one hauler a couple of years ago that were gouging the customers without beyond the rates. I mean, they were passing through a disposal increase that wasn't there. So having a viable utility that is well funded, I think, serves serves the citizens a lot more. The question you got to ask yourself is, would you rather have an operator running a truck that's maybe 10 or 12 years old that leaks, that's maybe polluting, that the service is not so reliable, that maybe they miss a few stops here and there, maybe the litter blows out, So I look at the value of service that they're providing, and I can tell you right now there are some good haulers. There's some not so good haulers. You guys are fortunate enough to have a good hauler. You can pick up the phone, you can call them, you can talk with one of the owners at any given time. So I think you get what you pay for. And again, back to the 10%. Yeah, they don't keep 10%. I mean, everybody tax-wise gets a cut at that. So when you winnow it down between what they have to have in reserve and what they have to pay in taxes, there's not a lot left.
I was going to say, because with the trucks, you said they're using CNG trucks now, right?
Correct.
And so those have a much higher initial cost.
Correct.
And they're not receiving the benefit of lower diesel prices at this point.
Well, if you look at the price
not
comparison
using
of compressed natural gas versus diesel, if you look at the newer diesel trucks, the hot energy, yeah, they're more, they pollute less. But in order to pollute less, they burn more fuel,
right? Which
is kind of counterintuitive to what you expect. The compressed natural gas cost over the long term compared to the historical rate of diesel has been less. There's a higher upfront cost for it because not only.
I was going to say, do you know what the difference is between a CNG and a diesel truck?
What the cost?
Yeah.
It's about $48,000.
A truck?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then you got the fueling station.
And then the other side of the coin is recyclables are no longer profitable anymore.
Not right now.
Right.
No. Mixed waste paper, which is going to make up about 60% of the material that's put out there, the current value of mixed waste paper right now is about $40 a ton. If you take it over to Far West Fiber, it costs them about $65 to $75 a ton to process it. So there's that difference between they're getting $40 a ton and it's costing $35 a ton, but they can't throw it away,
right?
Because the state law says if you collect on a curbside, you will process it, you will sell it,
right?
So unfortunately, the ratepayer gets stuck with that difference between the value of the material and the cost to process and the cost to market.
Okay.
It's a great lesson in economics for the regular citizen about how it works, because you wouldn't think that recycling is great, but and it still is, obviously, but when the prices of petroleum goes down, it really can, as we can see here, can be problematic. My question is, if the price of recycling you're not getting those margins, what is Tigard and Tualatin doing? It looks like they're not looking to increase their rates. It seems like
Well, I can't speak for Tualatin. I can tell you Tigard will be adjusting the rates up. There is a mechanism in their
this
rate.
year.
Correct. They set the rates, and then there's a CPI adjustment on an annual basis, and they do that a couple of years, and then they have a true up.
So those costs that you were showing on the screen, which shows Sherwood at what, $26 and change, or $25 and put that back up again.
That is.
Those comparison numbers of Tigard and Tualatin are numbers that haven't changed, but you're saying that they could change for the year 2016.
Tigard will change the way they've set it up. What they do is they set the rates, and every year there's a small CPI adjustment, and then after year 3 they go back and they review it, and if there needs to be adjustment up, then they do so to get it to that 10%.
Okay.
And if there needs to be adjustment down, then they do that.
And does that go before council as this is before our council?
The CPI adjustment, I don't believe it does, but on the true up, it does.
Behind you, the Leichners are saying it does.
Does it?
Oh, it does?
Okay.
So what can we expect that price to be? I mean, do you have any idea? I'm just curious. To go from $24.50, what that would be for Tigard for year 2016?
Chris was mostly accurate on the Tiger process. Last July, they raised the rate 7% to get us through 18 months. So they'll look at it this summer with the adjustment he's talking about, making it effective January 1 of next year.
Okay,
So they'll go on a calendar year rather than the middle of the year process.
okay.
And so this reflects their already increase.
Correct.
And then
Okay.
what about Tualatin? I think that Councilor
Yes.
Piper asked.
Right.
Walton, I don't do Tualatin. The last I recall, they are requesting, there was a rate request that has been put in by Republic. I know that they just requested one for Lake Oswego. And so chances are pretty good that it's the same hauler will be requesting one from the city of Tualatin.
Okay, and I have one more follow-up question. For those of you who are listening in the audience, on our paperwork, we have a 31 35-gallon cart for a current rate of $23.65. The new rate is $25.63 for Sherwood. But now on the comparables, we have a 32-gallon. What's up with that? What's the discrepancy there?
Well,
Just a
there's,
misnomer.
you guys run 32 or 35? 35s. The standard for a long time used to be the 32-gallon can.
Oh,
And depending on the cart manufacturer, it can either be a 32 or a 35.
and what
And
does a Tigard have? 30.
So you'll either see a 32 or a 35. They switch them out into, either way. Same with the 60. It could be a 60, a 64, or a 65. A lot of it depends on the cart manufacturer and the way they've spec'd it out.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, could you comment on Washington County? Because Washington County appears to be dramatically lower than everyone else.
Do you want to talk about Washington?
Washington County reviews their rates annually and then make adjustments in July if warranted. Their service is a little different than the city of Sherwood and Tigard's. Their recycling program is every other week, and their yard debris is every other week, where Sherwood is every other week recycling, but weekly yard debris. So there's a little difference of rates. Or service, excuse me.
And the last time that rates were increased was 2014
For Sherwood?
for Sherwood.
Yes.
And on this list, it's Sherwood, Tigard, and Washington County, Lake Oswego that Pride directly works with.
We do not service Tualatin or Lake Oswego.
Okay.
And in Beaverton, we have just a little bit, just a piece that was annexed in, very little of that, but we do operate in there.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can we make changes to ours, our pickup schedule? Like you said, with yard debris, they do it every other week. Is that an option for us to change things around?
It was every other week years ago, and then the council at that point decided they wanted weekly because they were getting a lot of citizen requests for weekly service. And that would be a council decision that if they chose to go back to every other week, that can be done.
I was going to say, I think back when I was Councilor Henderson, the vegetation has aged. I mean, it's gotten more mature now over the years, so that's the reason why we decided to go weekly instead of biweekly at that point.
But one follow-up question to that, if we were to adjust the service levels, would that affect the rates? I mean, we would.
Yes, there would be a revenue and cost analysis, I'm sure, and they would have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, we may see people be more interested in not increasing the rates and just having that collected every other week.
Yeah, reducing service.
Do council have any other questions for staff or the provider? Okay,
That's
thank
good.
you.
Thank you.
No, did
Thank
you
you.
have a question?
I was just going to say on the recycling part of it, even though you have a container that fits so much, if you have more cardboard, you can put more out there other than the can.
Correct. You can, as long as it's prepared properly,
Right,
and
and
set
it's-
next to it, or we can provide you a second recycle cart.
Right.
You're talking about the mixed commingling material. There's
Right.
no fee for that second cart if you need.
Okay.
And one more question. I haven't paid a lot of attention to what my bill says lately, but there used to be the recycling credit.
Correct.
And is that gone?
Yes, we approached a few years ago to the council, and they would establish the rate as you're looking at tonight, and then we added, it started out at $1 more a month, that it just arbitrarily added, the council added it to it, and then if you recycle at least once a month, you got the $1 back. So it was a net effect to the customer, and over time, when the council saw the effect of increasing participation, because people saw that $1, it went to $2, $3, and then $4. But now the participation rate is almost 100%. The carts have made it a lot easier for customers, and it created, we went to a different billing system, and the $4 credit was creating some issues when people would start or stop halfway through the month. We had to hand prorate those, and it was creating some issues. And so we asked for, and the council said we don't see any reason at that point. So that's where the $4 went.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, I'll go ahead and go to Sylvia.
The Sherwood City Council will hold a public hearing to receive testimony on 5 items on the agenda tonight. Resolution 2016-003, adjusting solid waste and recycling collection rates. Ordinance 2016-001, repealing Chapter 3.25 marijuana tax. Ordinance 2016-002, declaring a ban on recreational marijuana producers, recreational marijuana processors, recreational marijuana wholesalers, and recreational marijuana retailers, referring ordinance. Ordinance 2016-003, imposing a 3% tax on the sale of marijuana items by a marijuana retailer and referring ordinance. Ordinance 2016-004, declaring a ban on medical marijuana processing sites and medical marijuana dispensaries, referring ordinance. The purpose of the hearing is to allow the public an opportunity to submit testimony on the above said items. The order of business the council will follow is to hear a staff report, receive any correspondence, and then receive public testimony. Additional staff comments will be received. Questions from the council will follow. The hearing will then be closed or continued, and no further testimony will be received. Discussion by the council will follow. Any interested person may present testimony. If you wish to speak, please fill out the testimony form and submit it to the city recorder. The mayor will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the mayor. When you come to the microphone, please state your name and address for the record, as this hearing will be recorded, and limit your testimony to 4 minutes.
Thank you, Sylvia. Okay, so I'll open up the testimony time. Tony Pablo. Push the button, sir. Tony,
Tony,
push
hit
the button.
It needs to be green, Tony. Green. Hold it down. There you go.
You're on.
Want me to shut up?
Okay.
I just have a few questions that I'd like to have answered. I'm sure one of the biggest costs for Pride are gasoline prices. So as mentioned, they've gone down. Okay, plastics have gone down, so I can see the flip side of that. But I want to know what happens to these garbage trucks that are gas-powered now once they transition over to the, natural gas. I mean, are we going to make any money off of that deal or not? And getting back to gasoline costs, I mean, how much have they saved in gasoline costs? I don't know if that's, proprietary information or if it's something that you can ask for, but I'd be interested in knowing that. And when I saw 10%, yeah, that seems like a pretty nice margin. Say 5% goes back to the city, whatever it's going to turn out in the end. Why does it have to be 5% to the city? So those are just a couple of questions I'd like to know. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Think we got another one coming? Come on. Kim Young. You're speaking on this, correct?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to make you sit back down.
So thank you for doing that, because I think I didn't understand the whole increase on Pride, so that was very helpful. So I just had a question where it says in the resolution that the city can determine the 8 to 12%, and it's recommended 10. So could the city choose 8 and not, and you don't have to answer because I know, but I'm just quite wondering if the city chose 8, would that mean not quite as much of an increase for the citizens? Although it's a small increase of like $2, so, but percentage-wise, so. That's all. I have a question on it.
Thank you. So, I think in answering that, staff, did you want to take that?
Yeah, and I would like Chris actually and Mike to come up and kind of fill in the gaps. But I'll start that conversation. I think, Mike, you can address the conversion from gasoline to liquid natural
I
gas.
think part of the question was what happens to the old trucks. Some of them, a couple of them, we've scrapped the bodies out because the bodies were wore out, and we've sold the chassis. Some we sell all of them to operators maybe out of state that aren't. The state of Oregon is pushing real hard for clean fuels, and part of their legislation the last few years, if you're looking at that. And so we're trying to stay with that curve rather than be behind it and come in and say we need to buy 15 trucks all at once, and that's going to be a huge impact in the rates. That's why we try to buy a couple every year so it spreads that depreciation cost out. So that's what happens to the old trucks. And the price of fuel, when the price goes up or down, that's part of our costs that we report to the city. So with the drop in fuel savings or the drop in fuel costs, and even with the price of diesel being what it is, it's still, natural gas is still cheaper by the gallon unit or energy unit. So it's because right now, without the tax credits that we also see that we get, we're paying just over $1 a gallon equivalent for our natural gas. And part of the savings from that too is before the drivers would come in and line up and take turns fueling their trucks at the pumps on the clock. Now they come in, they back into their parking spot, plug the truck in, and it fuels itself overnight. So we do save 5-6 minutes on every driver every day. So that all figures into the rates and costs.
Are all your trucks CG?
No, about half the fleet is at this point. We started 4 years ago, I think, and so we replaced about half the fleet, doing 2 or 3 a year on a normal replacement schedule over a 10-year period.
Okay, and I think there might be a little bit of confusion that I'm hearing from the question
Okay.
in that Pride is a utility provider. So they're not owned by the city.
That's
So
correct.
the trucks are owned by Pride.
Correct.
They are not owned by the city of Sherwood.
Correct.
So when they are to be replaced or switched over to natural gas, that is a cost for the provider, which is Pride. It is not a city cost.
Correct. And when the trucks sell, if there's any value out of that, that's part of the revenue that goes into our total revenue base. So when the city looks at our total revenue, part of that's from sale, it used to be sale of recyclables, sale of trucks, used equipment, any of that shows up on the reporting form.
And one of the important, because Pride provides services beyond just the city limits of Sherwood, they're one company. One of the reasons we have someone like Chris Bell come in and look at their financials is we want to look at Sherwood only.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why they segregate. He segregates that information and makes sure that he's not bringing in expenses from another jurisdiction, here in Sherwood. So I think that's an important distinction when he's providing that service for us. The franchise fee is a 5% franchise fee. That is the standard franchise fee that we charge to all utilities, public and private. So that's for the use of the city right away. The roads, these are pretty heavy trucks that travel up and down these streets. There's wear and tear.
Code? Man,
That's by code. So the city charges its own utilities a 5% franchise fee, as you may recall. So our water utility and our stormwater utility also pay that 5% franchise fee. So if you lower it for these guys, which you could consider doing it, you're going to have every other company in here saying, I want the same deal that they're getting. PGE, Northwest Natural, anyone that uses our right away. So that's the caution in terms of lowering that franchise fee.
Okay.
What was the other question? Oh, 8%.
Setting the rate at
And you could
8%.
probably expound more. I mean, it is a range. So one option is, look, 10%, we're gonna go for 8%. What does that look like? I would think we'd have to go back and run some numbers to
Well,
take a look at.
Kind of goes with my question.
Yeah,
because
and
it
are there
sort of feels like,
alternatives?
Are you asking for a 10% increase, or what is the percentage of the increase?
This brings them to 10%.
To 10%.
Right.
yes.
So the increase brings them to the 10% level.
It's about a 6% increase.
And in some sectors, and it says in the staff report, you're actually losing money right now.
Correct.
So the composite or the aggregate is a combination of the three sectors.
Yeah, combination of residential, commercial, and Dropbox. And
So if the council wanted us to go back and say, look, let's run it at 8%, if that's the target, and/or let's look at different service levels to kind of see what that would look like, my recommendation is we go back and do some more work and bring that back for your consideration. If you want a smaller rate increase, if that's what I'm hearing from at least a couple counselors.
I do have a question. So that aggregate rate would, it's quite a big range here of negative 1.63% to 7.99%. And that's that three-prong, commercial, residential, and Dropbox. So going back to recalculate an average of 8%, is that what we're talking about here? I mean, as an option?
That is an option. One of the
Aggregate
and
8%?
again, one of the risks that you have doing that is, that you're going to have more or frequent rate increases. So this year it went 2 years without a rate increase. Prior to that, I think it was 3 years or 4 years you went without a rate increase. Yeah, usually when you lower that margin, you get to see us more often.
Well, I was returning to them so that they could answer the questions that the public had posed. So I'll close the public comment section and I'll return it to council, but you may want to just.
Yes, stay there, is my guess.
It sounds like there might be some additional questions, but I wanted to make sure that the public got their answers from you first. So, council, I'll return to you if you have some additional questions, comments. Councilor Anderson,
Question or number of questions. So this franchise agreement is somewhat unique in that it's a monopoly, right? I mean, we don't have another power provider, but we have cable providers and other.
Yep, you have
options.
one electric company in town,
Right.
you have one natural gas company in town, so it's not as unique as.
Probably not a monopoly, is more unique.
Right. So when you did the rate study, Chris, were you looking at, I mean, over the data that you were analyzing and provided, as Councilor Kuiper brought up, the profit ranged from 1.6%, negative 1.6% to 7.99%, depending upon the type of collection and service. So in the franchise agreement, it says what regarding the profit range that the hauler is able to request?
It doesn't specifically say, and correct me if I'm wrong, there's not a specific number in that.
So when you quote other haulers, this is like an industry average?
Correct.
And what is that industry average based on?
It's based on primarily what is the, well, there's a whole host of rationale how they got to the 10%.
Right. But for example, we have STC charges in Sherwood depending upon the type of service it is. So you might have a transportation STC charge for a drive-in, and that's not the same transportation STC charge for a medical office building because of the service is different.
Correct.
Right, and so the impact on the community is different. So I guess what I'm trying to get at is are those ranges a function of the industry that the Leichners are in collecting garbage, doing recycling, and doing yard debris based on an industry standard or a Western standard?
It is. A couple of years ago when, and this goes back to what, like 88, 89, the city of Portland was kind of an open market for garbage collection, and whether it was residential, commercial. If you wanted garbage, you just hung your head out and yelled, and somebody came up and would pick up your garbage. When the city looked at regulating that, they had an in-depth study, and one of the questions is what is the range? What is a reasonable rate of return given the services provided? And at that time, 10% was the number that came up. Since then, Portland has adjusted it down from 10% to 9.5%, but keep in mind, every year the city of Portland adjusts it to 9.5%. So, and it goes back to if you want to adjust that rate down a little bit lower, you're going to have more frequent rate adjustments. Other jurisdictions, so example, there's someone on the coast that the rate's 12%. And the reason is because of the distance and the smaller of the community, they assume that the risk is a little bit higher, therefore the return should be a little bit higher. In the open market, it's open market. If you can, if you're savvy enough for a hauler, you can get 10, 12, 15%. If you're not a savvy hauler, maybe you're getting 4 or 5%. So there's an open market element in Portland. We don't know what the rate is there. Most of the jurisdictions around here do set it at 10%. They have that range, that 8 to 12% range. And and there have been instances where it has gone above 12% where they've reduced it down. But usually, given the economy over the last few years, the nature of the tipping fee increases from Metro, the rates have been going up every year. And then the other piece too is the as Mike was saying, the emphasis on going from the old diesel trucks to clean fleets with the additional trucks and the not only the equipment but the infrastructure required to run a CNG truck. So we've been seeing upward pressure. We're hoping to get to that point where that levels out and there's some kind of we're between the recycling markets and between the tip fees and everything, that you'll have a couple years where you don't adjust rates, where it kind of rides and you're within that range. And that's what it used to be. It used to go 3, 4, 5 years without a rate adjustment. Now we're seeing a lot more frequent rate adjustments because of the issues I just raised.
Okay. And how often does Metro raise their rates?
Every year.
Every year.
In fact, I can only 2 years ago they didn't raise it, but other than that they've been raising it. When I first started, it was $62 a ton. Now it's $94 or 95, 98. I think about 96.
So, Mike, in those years that you didn't get a rate increase, how did you just absorb the Metro increase internally?
Sometimes we absorbed it or were able to handle it because recycling markets were going up, or the price of fuel came down a few years ago when the economy dropped. And some of it was realizing that everybody was in the same boat at the point in 08 and 09. So it was like, we need it, but everybody else is in the same boat. But you only do that so long before you start saying, okay, we've got to pay the bills, and we have to have something left over in case something goes wrong again.
I have just one last question so far. What is, or can you tell me without, divulging some confidentiality, what is the single most difficult cost that you have that's hard to control or hard to predict? Fuel? Or?
Fuel's a major part of our cost, but percentage-wise, it's not a big part of our overall cost. Okay. So, but it's more a frustration with our regional government as far as the amount of control they're trying to exert on the transfer stations, which affects our collection company. And they're going through a process now, and the contract ends with Waste Management at the end of 2019. And everybody's saying, where's it going to go after that? Because they're talking about maybe incinerating it. They're talking about aerobic digestion. All of those programs are going to be a big cost increase. That's the fear, that we may be looking at a $10 or $20 a year increase for 1 or 2 years, and that's going to be tough for everybody to swallow, and especially for councils like this that are looking at what's that going to do to the rates.
Okay.
And if the economy doesn't pick up, the recycling market doesn't come back. I mean, we were getting as high as $80 a ton for that material in your cart, which helps keep the rates flat. Now we're paying $30 to $40 a ton, and I don't see that changing, like Chris said, for a few years.
Right.
I mean, China buys most of the product that we recycle, and it's kind of sad when you see in the Northwest a land of timber, and our mills are closing, which is a big part of the market too.
Right. So when Metro makes that next generation
disposal, yep.
Right. Who gets to weigh in on that?
Well, all the local jurisdictions have a voice in that,
okay.
But it's going to be a tough one to battle.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
I have a question. If we were to ask you to go back and do an analysis, if we went to a biweekly pickup on yard debris, what's your best guess at what the difference might be, if any?
That's a good question. I haven't looked at that. I couldn't give you a number. I'd be afraid to throw a number and then everybody's going, that's it. And then it turns out to be $1 higher or lower, then everybody's going to go, well, don't you know? And I don't.
All right.
I'd like to be able to say I do, but because you're looking at some reduction in labor, obviously, and some disposal savings, because when we went from every other week to weekly, we added the extra labor. The carts were already there, so we didn't have to worry about the cart cost, but an extra driver in a truck, maybe not a full one for Sherwood's portion, but we picked up more yard debris. It wasn't like instead of 100 pounds every other week, 50 every week, it ended up being maybe 120 pounds. So people said, this is easy, I can put it out every week. So they generated more instead of just composting it or not mowing the lawn as often. So that would probably drop, which would affect your recovery rate in the region too.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
No, but I'd kind of like to have that number.
Okay, so thank you, and we'll bring it back to council. I noticed on our council packet, I just want to point out to everyone, because we talked a lot about rates of return and, you know, there's lots of different numbers. Could you just put that chart up for me so that it is on the screen, so that when we are deliberating, we're talking about that, the rates in relation to our neighbors?
Yep.
And so in our packet, it talks about the cities determined through analysis of financial information from Pride Disposal that their aggregate profit rate for 2014 ranged, there was a range, depending on the type of collection service, with an overall aggregate rate of a positive 6.1%, correct? Okay, so thank you for, no, the chart?
The chart, the last chart, that one.
And so they are receiving a return, that they are a positive provider, and they are in the positive on their recovery. And when I look at these numbers with our neighbors, the consultant talks about in the future, we expect our neighbors to be raising their rates. I heard that a lot with the water too, and yet our neighbors never made it to us. They never quite did. We kept being the tallest. We were still the highest. And so that concerns me when I hear things like that. When I hear that in the future, we really think our neighbors, I want to look at what we've got now. This is what we have now. This is the chart that we have now. We're the highest. We're the highest in every category. That is hitting our regular residential residents. And that concerns me. Do we get great service? Absolutely. Pride is awesome. I don't hear complaints about our provider. Their trucks are clean, they are quiet, they're timely. But that's not what we're talking about here. Because when our consultant says, you know, well, if we don't increase the rates, you could get polluted trucks coming through, truck leaks, poor service. I don't think that is really a fair assessment. I don't think that Pride's going to give us that kind of service. I think they are an awesome company. I think they give great service. I think that what I see is a request, a fair request, coming to us and saying, we'd like an increase. The problem that I have is that Social Security got a 0 increase. Our economy is not doing great. Wall Street, not doing great. And so people are suffering. And this hits every segment of our population the same. It hits the people on Social Security. It hits the people in the lower economic stratosphere. And so to say, well, you know, we need to make it even higher than the already highest rate, except Lake Oswego, for the 32 gallon. I'm not comfortable with that. I think that is an unreasonable request when across the board, all of our neighbors aren't getting increases in their salaries. They're not getting increases for Social Security. And so at this point, I don't feel that it's appropriate to increase the collection rates on our residents. It is critical that we provide a service, that it is required by the city for us to require the service. They provide a great service, and I don't think that's going to change. But at this point, I don't feel that an increase in our rates is appropriate on our citizens.
And I tend to agree. Fees have gone up a lot, and even a 6% increase, that's a huge increase. I mean, I would love to get a 6% raise. but I didn't. And I don't know a lot of people who did get that kind of number. Which is, I understand the predicament that you're in, especially with the recycling. That's difficult, but that's one reason why I thought it might be good to look at the recycling, or I'm sorry, the yard debris pickup. Because if that helped mitigate the cost a little bit, I think that could be an option. Because there's always an option to take your yard debris in also, if you have extra yard debris, or we have a lawn service and they take our yard debris for us, so mine is always empty. Well, it's never empty, but it's not my yard debris. My neighbors all use it. So I think there's a way to be a community around it and sort of work with it, especially with yard debris. And so I'm not super comfortable doing the increase either, but I would be willing to look at other options.
Sure. So I absolutely believe in fair compensation for fair services. And Mayor, you're absolutely right. They provide an excellent service. And I believe that you should be paid and compensated fairly for a great service. I also am thinking about ways that we could take a look at our garbage collection, our recycling collection, and the yard debris to see if we can't make some tweaks so that we can come out with sort of a situation where Pride gets what they need to keep going, make the payment, and power through what we are seeing in the oil markets. This is just an extremely great example of how interconnected our economies really are. Sherwood is not an island. We are very connected to the rest of the world, and whatever happens in the oil markets are going to reflect in some fashion on our pocketbook in many more ways. Just like we pay less at the gas pump, we might end up paying a little bit for more rates. I'm not saying that we should completely increase the rates as they are, but I do agree with Council President Harris that we can take a look at these and see where we can make some adjustments, if any, and give it another look before we move forward.
Thank you. Comments? Other comments? Do I have a motion?
I have another question.
Okay.
So if we're looking at maintaining rates, but decreasing the level of service, is that what our citizens want?
But that's not what we're looking at. Those were some suggestions made. What we're looking at and talking about now is the collection rate increase, and the collection rate increase only.
Right, but other members of council were talking about the willingness to come back and look at other scenarios.
Right.
So that might change this chart if Pride was able to go to biweekly yard debris. That might necessitate a smaller change, but it's not certainly going to decrease the rate. So I just want to bring it up that that was a service that we requested because constituents had requested it, as Councilor King put, as the city is maturing, and not to mention the services that we receive from Pride for the city, which we don't pay for, yard debris, recycling, shredding services, and garbage, which the city doesn't pay for. Then if we were to change that service in an attempt not to increase the rate, we're then providing the same charge for less service. Just want to put that as a.
So would it be a motion to ask about having that study done and get more feedback from the community in regards to what they would like to see done if there was a change in service or potentially
Collection.
increased? Yeah.
So my suggestion is you have a proposal in front of you. I've heard, obviously, a number of you don't sound supportive of that specific proposal. My suggestion is vote on what's in front of you. And if that fails, there could be an additional motion that could have support to direct staff to work on some alternatives and come back with a range of alternatives to either, live within the rates that we currently have. What does that look like? Does that mean less service? And that's a different conversation than what's in front of you tonight. which is really a proposed rate increase based on the information that's been provided. So I'd keep them separate versus trying to merge them together, is my recommendation.
Okay.
So I'll make a motion that we choose not to adopt Resolution 20106.
Actually, I would
Yeah, you need
do
to-
the approval, and if it fails, then it
Right.
fails
Nobody wants to approve it.
to be approved.
So you're making the resolution for us to vote on it, not to approve it. So well, you are making the motion to approve it, but if it
So
fails,
instead of
then it fails.
voting not to approve it,
Right.
my recommend, always vote in the affirmative.
Always,
The
yeah.
motion should be in the affirmative, basically to approve the resolution. It would get a second, and then if the vote fails, then it fails, rather than the opposite of voting to not approve.
It'll be a double
That's,
negative.
it's just,
Right.
yeah,
right,
it's just the
more
Robert
clear.
rules.
Robert's
so that it-
rules.
So that people understand what it is that they're voting on.
Of course, if no one's willing to make the motion, it would die for lack of a motion.
Okay,
That's
so
true.
does
If
anyone
one person
want
makes the
to make a
motion, dies for lack of a second, that's also
Does anyone
possible.
want to make the motion? All right, resolution fails. Thank you, Josh.
Is that way too? So thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. All right.
I was going to say, Mayor, to the
Hold on,
flip side
Father.
of that, because recycling costs money now, if you wanted to break it down even more, I guess it would be a dirty word, but you could charge people for more recycling they put up.
And
Well,
so,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, so in the future, if we would like for Pride to come back with some options, some think outside the box besides just raising the collection rates, it sounds like council would be interested in that. And so, we can set up with staff some work session in the future to talk about options and opportunities for working on solving the problem outside the box of just plain increasing the rates. Is that a good summary of what we were talking about? Okay.
Yes,
All right.
and one other item, just
Yes,
one other
yes,
item.
ma'am.
I'm going to throw it out there.
Do it.
You know what? Right now, they're providing services to the city, and we're not paying for them. And so I think that needs to be added to the mix, that if we are going to say to Pride to go back and crunch their numbers or do whatever, I think that should be thrown into the mix too. To
Well,
take
and
a
we
look at
want
what
to
we're,
hear, yeah,
what
we
the
want to
city's
hear
doing.
what
would like
other cities
some
do.
options.
Yeah,
Right,
what-
options.
Those are all included in the options that,
Yep.
that staff will bring forward. All right, thank you. Thank you, staff. Ordinance 2016-001, repealing chapter 3.25 marijuana tax. Josh Soper.
Thank you. This is the first of several marijuana-related ordinances for you. This is the second hearing on the repeal of the city's existing marijuana tax, which, as we've discussed several times now, the city enacted prior to the passage of Measure 91 in the hope that it would be grandfathered in. Unfortunately, that was not the case, and so this is to repeal the existing tax. You have a separate ordinance later on the agenda to potentially put a new tax in place as allowed by state law.
All right, so I will open up the public hearing. Do I have any public comment sheets on this ordinance? Alan Pearson. So make that light green, sir.
Okay. I'm Alan Pearson, and I live on Alder Grove Avenue. And the repeal of a tax of 3.25 and a addition of a tax of 3%. As you may know, I'm severely fiscally responsible in my orientation toward government. The marijuana tax is what we would call in political science a sin tax. We are going to get a medical marijuana facility in this town. We went through this wonderful procedure before it's grandfathered in. We're going to have one. One of the things the chief testified about was this facility is going to increase the cost of policing in town, which was going to be paid for by the tax on marijuana. I don't smoke marijuana. I'm not going to pay the tax. A lot of people in this town don't smoke marijuana. They're not going to pay the tax. The people who use the product are going to pay the tax. If you do not tax it, then I will be paying the tax to pay for the increased police protection that is going to be required. We know it is going to happen. Why you want to repeal a 3.25% rate and substitute a 3% rate is somewhat beyond me. It's not fiscally responsible to eliminate a higher tax and replace it with a lower tax. But it's also completely irresponsible not to have a tax at all on this product. We're going to pay for it. I don't want to have to pay for it. And you just had a nice conversation about costs to the citizens. If you do not tax this product, you're going to tax the citizens of Sherwood to pay for the increased costs, which we know are coming. It's as simple as fiscally irresponsible not to tax this. And I think it's irresponsible not to tax it at 3.25 instead of 3.0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I clarify, it's a 15% tax that we're repealing?
Yeah, a couple of clarification points there. So 3.25 is the chapter number in our city code that the tax is located in. The tax rate is actually 10%, and it's actually only on recreational marijuana, not on medical marijuana. The medical marijuana rate under our current code is 0%. And I apologize, I also gave a little short shrift to the explanation for why we're repealing it, since we've been through this a few times. So for the benefit of the audience, there was a theory that because Measure 91 wasn't completely clear on the subject, prior to Measure 91 going into effect, the number of cities took advantage of trying to put a tax in place before Measure 91 went into effect in the hope that it would be grandfathered under Measure 91, which prohibited local taxes. Unfortunately, when the legislature clarified Measure 91, they didn't clarify it in favor of grandfathering. They clarified it in the opposite direction and explicitly said, you may not have a tax, a local tax, except you may have a tax of a maximum of 3% if you refer it to the voters. So this tax that we currently have on the books is preempted by state law. The only tax we could put in place would be a maximum of 3%.
Thank you. So I will close the public hearing on this item number and bring it back to council. Do I have a motion or any
Question.
discussion? Yes.
Josh, can we pass a tax on medicinal marijuana per state law?
State law is not 100% clear. It appears to, my reading is that it prohibits a tax on medical marijuana. There are a couple of other cities who are taking a different approach and believing that they could tax medical marijuana. The information I've received indicates strongly that the intention of the legislature was to prohibit a tax on medical marijuana, and that if cities do move forward with that, we'll be seeing a bill clarifying that you definitely cannot tax medical marijuana.
Right.
So whatever money they collect, if it reverses, they'll have to refund it.
Correct.
And also, if we don't repeal this tax, it's illegal under state law.
we're in violation.
So you have a tax on the books that you can't enforce. Right.
So I move that we read, caption, and adopt ordinance 2016-001, repealing chapter 3.25 of the marijuana tax.
Second. Sylvia?
Ordinance 2016-001, repealing Chapter 3.25 marijuana tax. Councilor Browse?
Aye.
Councilor Robinson?
Aye.
Councilor Kuiper?
Aye.
Councilor King?
Aye.
Councilor Henderson?
Aye.
Council President Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Clark?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, council. We will move to ordinance 2016-002, declaring a ban on recreational marijuana products, recreational marijuana processors, recreational marijuana wholesalers, and recreational marijuana retailers. Referring ordinance. Josh?
Thank you. So this is also a second hearing on this ordinance. It was before you at our last council meeting. A couple changes were requested by council at that meeting that you see in this ordinance now. So previously, we had a single ordinance that would ban all of the permissible categories of recreational marijuana facilities and medical marijuana facilities in a single ordinance. This ordinance now would only apply to the permissible categories of recreational facilities that can be banned. So it lists all the recreational categories that you're allowed to ban. You don't have to ban them all, but you can. And then we also removed the emergency clause because it became clear that we did not have a unanimous vote that's required for an emergency clause. I do have one Scrivener's error to bring to your attention. The new effective date language that we have in this ordinance, it should be the same as in the next two ordinances on your agenda.
Okay.
Unfortunately, it has the previous effective date language. So I will just read into the record what the effective date language should read. And that's in section 5 of the ordinance. And it should say, this ordinance shall be effective upon certification of the election results by the City Council if it receives the affirmative majority of the total number of votes cast thereon.
Thank you, Josh. I will open up the public hearing. Do I have any? Okay, I'm seeing no public hearing request forms. I will close the public hearing and return the question to council. This is the second reading. Do we have any additional comments, clarifications, questions? Councilor Browse, we didn't hear from you at the last meeting, so did you have something to add on this?
Sure. Bear with me for a second as I take you through the process that I've been contemplating since the last meeting. Looking at the question before us, I've gone through 4 different lenses in no specific order, but the first lens was the personal lens. So based on personal experience growing up in a household where marijuana was prevalent and abused and sold, and went through that whole experience, so personal experience. Second lens is the lens of a alcohol, tobacco, and other drug preventionalist for the last 19 years, and teaching hundreds of kids the merits of saying no to those items. I was talking to a citizen the other day and talking about the marijuana issue and shared that experience with her, and she said, well, Renee, if those hundreds of children are standing before you and you vote for this bill, or not bill, this ordinance, if you allow the sale of marijuana in your city, what does that make you look like as an instructor all those years? Pretty powerful image. The third lens that I was looking at was a lens of a person that is pro-business and believes in business and how it supports the community, keeps the economy flowing, and how it offsets the tax burden that our residents have. The fourth, and one of the most important, is the viewpoint or the lens of the citizen. And talking to the number of citizens in the different sectors that I'm involved in, overwhelmingly, they were telling me no, they don't want to see recreational sales or distribution centers. And as I then formed my own opinion based on those 4 lenses, what's propelling me, or what I would suggest, is that we would go ahead and put it to the voters. Business-wise, the consumer is going to decide if it's voted to have the businesses here in Sherwood, ultimately it's going to come down to the consumer. So that's where I'm leaning as of now, based on those 4 lenses of conversations that I've had.
Madam Mayor, I need to
Yes, I
leave
did know
shortly,
that.
so I will move that we read, caption, and adopt ordinance number 2016-002, declaring a ban on recreational marijuana producers, etc.
I'll second it.
Sylvia?
Ordinance 2016-002, declaring a ban on recreational marijuana producers, recreational marijuana processors, recreational marijuana wholesalers, and recreational marijuana retailers, referring ordinance. Councilor Browse?
Aye.
Councilor Robinson?
Aye.
Councilor Kuiper?
Aye.
Councilor King?
Aye.
Councilor Henderson?
Aye.
Council President Harris?
Nay.
Mayor Clark?
Nay.
Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you. So I knew that Council President, or I'm sorry, I'm going to do that more than once. Councilor Robinson needed to leave, so I wanted to make sure that you had an opportunity to vote before you had to leave. So thank you. Thank you for, yes, so thank you for staying. I did want to share my thoughts on what I was thinking on this, but I didn't want to delay her leaving. The recreational marijuana, the problem that I have is the section right here on financial impacts. And I'm one that always looks at, it's not about what I want, it's about what is real and what is here. And as I think it was stated before when we were talking, we don't live on an island. Sherwood isn't an island. And the reason I could not support this ban is we don't get to put borders up around Sherwood. And our neighbors are not distant neighbors. They're right next to us. So anyone can drive from Sherwood into King City, into Newburgh, into any of our very 1 mile away locations to buy recreational marijuana should we ban it. But guess what? They're going to come 1 mile back to Sherwood and they're going to smoke it here. And we're going to have the problems here. And we're going to have to police it here. And if we ban it, we don't get the funding. The funding goes bye-bye. And so our citizens are then going to be burdened with an additional fee to provide policing service for something that we banned that we cannot stop because the state has said recreational marijuana is legal in the state of Oregon. Now, I might not like that. I won't be smoking it myself. It won't be in my house. I will be teaching my children to not do that. But I'm not controlling the state of Oregon. The state of Oregon has said this is something that we will allow. And so it's our job to provide protection for our citizens, in my opinion. And the only way to do that is if we have the funding. It doesn't come from the sky. It has to come from tax dollars. And those are tax dollars that we won't receive if we ban it. So I am hoping that the citizens of Sherwood choose to not ban it in the city of Sherwood when it goes before the voters, and that is what they will hear from me. I will be recommending that they not ban it so that we can get the funding, because if we don't get the funding, we're going to have a budget issue in the city of Sherwood. Absolutely, yes.
I also would like to second her reasons, and knowing this was coming up, I went and visited some of the dispensaries. When I talked to the owner of Chalice Farms in King City, which is about 4.5 miles away, he said 50% of his customers are from Sherwood. 50%. If you drive by there, there's 10 cars in there all the time. There's cars in that parking lot all the time, and 50% of them are going there, getting their cannabis, and driving back to Sherwood, and either doing it in their home or their parks or wherever they're doing it legally or illegally. And she's absolutely right. The amount of money that we will lose for our police force to be able to enforce the laws, like you cannot smoke in public. It's like alcohol. You can't go to the park with your
can of bud,
whatever it is you have. I don't know the terms, but and smoke it with your friends. I mean, people do it just like people go to the parks now and drink their beer, but the police have the ability to enforce those laws. And we need to make sure they have the resources and ability to do that, and not take money from citizens like Alan Pearson said, from their tax dollars for something they're not using. So the money would be coming directly from those users, or the sin tax, as they like to call it. And then we have the additional revenue with the 3% that we're putting on there. So that's quite a bit of money. I mean, towns are seeing $100,000 monthly in tax revenue from this. Imagine what that could do for our police force. It would really go a long way. And the people in Sherwood who are going to do it are already doing it. I think it's important for you to also know that some people are going to say, well, can we just ban the stores, the retail establishments, or can we just ban the grow operations? No, the state of Oregon has said, if you ban even one of those things, you don't get the money. You can have 22 dispensaries, but if you've banned grow operations, you do not get the money. So I think that's important to know too, that we can't say no dispensaries or no grow operations. It's all or nothing, and it's all the money or none of the money. So I think that's important to keep in mind too when you decide to go and vote.
So, thank you.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple comments.
Yes.
I also considered the cost, the burden that having a dispensary would be on our services in Sherwood. And that is an unknown cost, just like the, I personally would like to see the data, Counselor Harris, that says somebody in Portland regional area, because of recreational marijuana, has received $100,000 in taxes.
It's different all over because different towns are different dollar amounts.
Right, but I haven't seen any data that could support that, considering it just started.
It's not in Oregon. Just historically
Oh,
in the other two states.
Okay, well, you didn't say Oregon, you said other towns.
I didn't
and
say Oregon, I just said there are other towns, which is.
Right, but we would make the assumption that you're talking about Oregon, because that's where we live. So I think that that's an unknown, what we would receive or what we wouldn't receive. And if you look at what the law would require, it's 3%. So if a recreational dispensary did $1 million a year, we'd get $30,000.
No,
I think
additional 3%. That's
Well,
our own local.
Yeah, the state tax is a graduated, first of all, it's only on early sales. After 17, it goes down to 17%, of which 10% is shared across the state based on population. So again, it's an unknown amount. And that's like making a promise that we can't keep. We have no idea what that revenue would be versus the cost of having a dispensary, retail dispensary.
Yes, I apologize if I made it sound like we were going to make $100,000. That was not what I had meant
Sherwood.
to say.
Yeah, I think that that's a gross overestimate of what we could possibly receive. If 3% of our own tax in an establishment that does $1 million a year would be $30,000, I think that the cost to having a dispensary would be greater than $30,000 as the effect has on our community.
But again,
That's a guess.
Yeah, you're still talking about the 3%. But if every dispensary in Oregon is making $1 million, you're talking about $100 million. And we're getting a percentage of that in addition to our 3%.
So it's the state plus the 3%.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. But again, that's a completely unknown amount.
Correct.
Right.
If
you just
want
have to go historically on what other jurisdictions have seen. So you're right. It is unknown. We don't know what Oregon's going to do. Right now, Oregon is outselling Colorado and Washington. So
Right.
it's hard to say what it will continue to do.
If you'd like to look at the intrinsic issues that arise from a recreational marijuana distribution retailer, there is an interesting documentary on Netflix called High Profit.
Mm-hmm.
And it is about Breckenridge, Colorado, and there are a lot of intrinsic issues that arise that through that documentary. I've not seen the whole thing, but I've started watching it that don't help to bring a community together. And my motivation for putting it into the hands of the voters is that's what the state law allows. When the citizens of Sherwood voted on Measure 91, they did not pass it. So our voters, in my opinion, have already spoken. We still have so many rules, so many regs, so many regulations that haven't been determined. I would choose rather to allow the medicinal dispensary that's already here and have an opportunity to get into this new industry, new business slowly rather than jumping in feet first and see what happens. Doesn't mean we can't amend. If our voters vote to put it into the charter, it would be far more difficult to amend it in the future. But we have home rule, and that's exactly what the charter's for. And the state law allows us to send it out to the voters. And I think one thing I'd also like to point out is when the council makes a decision in our council rules, it talks about moving forward, not continuing to revisit that issue and to honor the decision that's been made. And we have other steps to make. We have a ballot measure, ballot title to draft. And so every time we get back to this topic, I hope we don't have to reiterate the reason why we voted no and retrospectively the reason why we voted yes, because a decision has been made.
Right, and the only reason that I wanted a clarification was to allow Councilor Robinson to leave early. Or
Oh, sure.
I could have just simply allowed the deliberation before the vote, but I was being respectful to the counselor who needed to leave. So I'm not trying to belabor the point or rehash it. I wanted to give her an opportunity to take her vote. And so that's what I did. And then I took my opportunity to explain my vote. So
Councilor Robinson didn't explain her vote. She simply made a motion.
she chose not to explain her vote. She needed to leave.
Right.
So, so moving forward, ordinance 2016-003, imposing a 3% tax on the sale of marijuana items by a marijuana retailer and referring ordinance. Dr. Soper.
So this is also a second reading. There are no changes to this ordinance except the effective date language that we just discussed was changed in all of these ordinances to handle the timelines related to the election results. So this would impose a 3% sales tax, local sales tax by the city on the sale of recreational marijuana items at recreational retail stores within the city's boundaries. That has to be referred to the voters. The first opportunity would be the November 2016 ballot, just like the previous ordinance. And the relationship between this ordinance and the previous ordinance is that if a ban is imposed, a tax cannot also be imposed. You can put them both on the same ballot, and if they both pass, we'll have a ban, but we won't have a tax. And so we have to make that clear, of course, in the ballot title. So you can put both on the ballot if you want. That is an option.
So if the ban goes away, then the tax goes into effect.
Right. So if you put both on the ballot and the ban doesn't pass and the tax does pass, then you have a tax.
Yes.
If they both fail, you don't have either. But if they both pass, you're going to get the ban and not the tax. And that would also apply to the next item on your agenda, the medical marijuana ban. If that one passes, as Councilor Harris was pointing out, if you ban anything, you can't have the tax.
So what you're saying is if we vote to impose a 3% tax and we vote that this is yes, we wouldn't have to bring it to the voters because inherently if one of the other ordinances or what we put to the voters passes, then it inherently means 3%.
No. If you want to have a 3% tax, you do have to have the voters approve that, regardless.
Okay, I will open up the public hearing. Seeing no public comment sheets, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to council. Council comments? Motion?
Move that we read, caption, and adopt ordinance 2016-003, imposing a 3% tax on the sale of marijuana items by a marijuana retailer and referring ordinance.
Second.
Sylvia?
Ordinance 2016-003, imposing a 3% tax on the sale of marijuana items by a marijuana retailer and referring ordinance. Councilor Browse?
Aye.
Councilor Robinson is absent. Councilor Kuiper?
Aye.
Councilor King?
Aye.
Councilor Henderson?
Aye.
Council President Harris?
Aye.
Mayor Clark?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council. Ordinance 2016-004, declaring a ban on medical marijuana processing sites and medical marijuana dispensaries, referring ordinance. Josh Soper.
So unlike the others, this is a first reading because this is a new ordinance that came out of the discussion that we had at the previous council meeting. So this ordinance would specifically prohibit the establishment of medical marijuana processing sites and medical marijuana dispensaries within the city of Sherwood. It also would have to be referred to the voters. If it passes tonight, it will come back for a second hearing unless we were to get a unanimous vote, which we can't because we're missing a councilor. The other important point with this one is that there is a grandfathering provision under state law. So any of these facilities that are already operating and have their land use permits would get to continue to operate even if you pass the ban and even if it is passed by the voters.
So the one that we already have will stay?
Yes.
Okay.
We have one dispensary already, as I understand it, that's fulfilled all those requirements, and at least one medical marijuana processing site, as I understand it as well.
Yes.
All right, Council? Any discussion? Any motion?
You need to open the public hearing.
Oh, I'm
now?
sorry. I am so sorry. So many ordinances all in a row. I will open up the public comment section. Do we have any public comments? All right, the public hearing is closed, and I will bring it back to council. Council, do we have any comments?
So this is the first reading.
It is correct.
It has
Yes.
to go to a second reading.
Yes, it does.
Right.
So,
Because it's not unanimous.
yeah, all right. So we have to vote yes to send it to the next one.
Yes, we do.
Okay.
Just a point of clarification, Josh.
Fails.
If the motion fails, though, does it die
There is
tonight?
no
then?
second reading.
Then there's no
That's right.
second reading.
And there is no second reading.
I think I misunderstood your comment. You would have to vote in order to send it to a second reading, but you are not required to send it to a second
Okay.
reading. If
Right.
it
Thank
dies
you.
tonight,
Right.
it dies.
Thank you for the clarification.
Any comments? Do I have a motion? Okay, I have a question because it doesn't appear that there is a lot of interest in even moving this. So if it moves, does it die on the floor, as does any?
If there's no motion, it dies for lack of a motion, just like
Go
anything
Not
else.
hearing
I
any
would
motion.
vote, do we go ahead and take a vote, though?
No, if it dies, correct?
Well, I do have one quick comment.
Yeah.
I mean, passing this ordinance, it seems kind of silly that if it were approved by the voters, that basically gives somebody a monopoly within the town. But that's kind of how I'm looking at it. So
Say that one more time.
the ones that are going to be grandfathered one are going to have a monopoly in this town. So
If we ban it.
Yeah.
I'm not really up on that. So.
Yeah.
I'm gonna let it die, so.
But if it dies, would it get this to the voters?
No.
No, the motion to have it banned will die. I'm hearing no motion. All right, ordinance dies. I will return to our proclamation because we didn't get to. But Councilor Kuiper, you are absolutely okay to go if that is what you
I must
need to
be
do.
relieved
I
of my duties.
completely understand, Councilor Kuiper. Thank you for staying through our business portion. But I want to give the school board recognition their due by reading their proclamation. Proclamation proclaiming January 2016 as School Board Recognition Month. Whereas school boards create a vision for what students should know and be able to do. And whereas school boards establish clear standards for student performance. And whereas school boards ensure that student assessments are tied to established standards. And whereas school boards are accountable to the community for operating schools that support student achievement. And whereas school boards align school district resources to ensure that students meet standards. And whereas school boards create a climate that supports the philosophy that all children can learn at high levels. And whereas school boards build collaborative relationships based on trust, teamwork, and shared accountability. And whereas school boards are committed to continuous education and training on issues relating to student achievement. And now, therefore, I, Sherwood Mayor Chrisanna Clark, do hereby declare the City of Sherwood's appreciation of the members of the Sherwood School Board and proclaim the month of January 2016 to be School Board Recognition Month. Thank you to the school board for all they do. Let's give them a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you very much. We will move back to citizen comments. So citizens have an opportunity to make comments if they so choose. Do we have any citizen comment forms on things not on the agenda? Thank you very much, Sylvia. Gail Cussford.
Thank you. Good evening. Gail Cutts from Sherwood. I'm here to talk about the couple of upcoming events at the YMCA, and they are our most critical events of the year. Each year, the YMCAs across the country raise funds to support programs and services that help strengthen the community in which they serve. The YMCA of Columbia-Willamette and our Sherwood Regional Family YMCA are no different. Everything the Y does is in service to building a better us. From athletics to education to health services to safe places, the Y fills the gaps where society falls short. Because we believe that every person and every community deserves the chance to thrive. Please join us at the following two events as we celebrate our annual campaign, the primary initiative for raising vital funds for a better community. The first one is a week from tonight, So I know you all have the night off. The YMCA of Columbia Willamette. So this is the big one. This is Columbia Willamette that will essentially put people from 5 surrounding counties in our town for that night, celebrating what the Y does, from Clark County to Clackamas County to Multnomah County to Sherwood to Beaverton. All of those folks will be here. They chose to do it last year at a hotel out by the airport. And this year it is going to be at the Sherwood Center for the Arts. So we're really excited to have them in town for the night. The kickoff is for our Strong Communities campaign. This year's event is entitled For a Better Community. It'll be held at our Sherwood Center of the Arts next Tuesday, January 26th from 6 to 8 p.m. And this is an opportunity to show a lot of folks who hopefully have been here before, maybe not, our support for our own Sherwood community. The second event is Saturday, February 13th. So this is Valentine's Day weekend. You know you have to have a date, right? We will set sail on Saturday, February 13th for our annual Dine and Dance, the Sherwood YMCA's signature event, also at the Sherwood Center of the Arts from 6 to 10 p.m. This year's theme is the Love Boat. The event includes dinner, dancing, both silent and live auctions. There's free childcare at the YMCA. You do not have to be a member to attend the event or take advantage of the childcare. Our very own Captain Mark Daniel in the audience tonight will be our Captain Stubing for the evening. He will be looking dapper, I am sure. Tickets are on sale now. They are starting to sell pretty quickly, so we encourage you to get yours if you are looking for a fun event. $50 for a single cruiser and $85 if you're bringing a shipmate. All funds raised go to support youth and teen programs and services, the diabetes prevention program, which we are literally pioneering here in Sherwood, and the financial assistance for those in need. You know, the Y is more than just a place to get a quick workout. You have lots of options for that here in town. The Y does so much more for this community. And I think that we don't toot that horn enough. And I'm on the YMCA board, so I'm happy to do that. I'm happy to play this role. Last year alone, the Sherwood Y, our very own Y, gave away $300,000 in financial aid. This means kids got swimming lessons. This means kids got to go to camp. This means people could actually afford to join the Y, and our silver sneakers, older citizens could come and have a place to socialize and get a workout and be healthier themselves. So we hope that you will come out and support both of these events. They provide vital funds to continue these important and necessary community services for a better you, for a better us, for a better community. Your Sherwood YMCA.
Jan Hatcher?
Hi, Mayor. Sorry, okay, I'm not close to this. I'm probably going to lose it here, but I don't even know why I came, but I just feel like I need to tell my town, my community, Sherwood, the town that I love, that I am legally blind. I'm a senior. I live in Carriage Place Apartments, and I got an email last week saying that I have to move. And there is no reason why. My house is immaculate. You can come to my house any time of the day. I'm clean. I'm quiet. I pay my rent on time. I've rented for 30 years and I've never had any problem. I don't even know who this manager's boss is. I have called everybody. I had Channel 12 interview me on Friday. I've called the governor. This has got to stop in Oregon. I have no place to go. I don't even have family here. And I'm going to be on the street and I am scared. And I went to, I'm sorry. I really apologize, but I'm so upset. I've been in the emergency room twice this week with my heart and chest pains, and I don't even have heart problems. And this no-cause eviction, something's got to be done here. I don't even know if there's even anybody that can help me or not. I called the tenant hotline, and I talked to a possible tenant attorney, but I don't know. But I want to stay here. I want to live here. I don't, the rents are so high. There's no way that I'm going to find anything. Anyway, I'm sorry. I really wanted to just let everybody know what's going on, that this is not okay.
Thank you, Jan. That is heartbreaking. And so, Joe, could you help Jan in finding the correct social service department to assist her in navigating what is probably a very frustrating system for someone in her situation?
Yes.
Okay.
Do you know what a no-cause eviction is? I mean, I can get it from the title, but
It's been a while since I've done any landlord-tenant work, but for example, I think off the cuff, at the end of your lease, the landlord doesn't have to renew the lease, or if you're on a month-to-month lease, the landlord typically, just on a certain amount of notice, can end the lease.
They get money to keep seniors and disabled people in the building.
Okay. So, okay. So
They need to lose their federal dollars if I have to move.
So
This is wrong.
Jan, our city manager, Joe, is going to follow up with you and see if he can get you to the right people to get the assistance that you need in navigating the process. We don't, as a council, but what I'd like to see is I'd like to see you feel like your city is responding to help you find who does do this. Thank you, Joe. I appreciate that. Diane Brown?
can someone take her home?
Okay, this is on, right? Okay. Good evening. I'm Diane Brown. I'm the owner of Omnia Salon and Day Spa. My address is Bowman Court. That's heartbreaking. I'm here to discuss the parking issue near my business. I'm right off of First Street over here. I have been very frustrated with the lack of concern expressed by 3 city employees and the assistant city manager, Tom Pessimer, who has not returned 3 of my phone calls this past month. I brought up concerns about parking before a new salon with 12 stylists opened on 2nd Street November 1st. I spoke with Chief of Police Jeff Groth 2.5 years ago, and the problem of the parking has gotten at least 100 times worse since then. I was told recently that Sherwood is a walking old town. Business patrons can park and walk to what they want. For our particular business, our clients are in the salon for an hour up to 3 hours. My independent contractors are having difficulty parking on the street due to a house of construction off of Oak that has been ongoing for over 1.5 years. The Montessori next to my business has cones on 2nd Street that have been there for over a month that are taking up 4 to 5 spots, and the new Savvy Salon that I mentioned earlier. I am also concerned for my girls' safety walking to their cars in the evenings because they're having to park 2-3 blocks away. With the attack that happened at the Cannery Row apartments, there was a woman that was attacked at Cannery Row walking her dog about mid-December. I don't know if she made a police report, but she went around to all the apartments and let everybody know that she was attacked. And she didn't have a purse or anything like that, so I don't know if it was an attempted rape or what it was, but that's a concern when we're leaving at night. So what I'm asking is, when was the last parking survey done? Because every time I call the city, they say, well, there was a parking survey done and there's ample parking. Was that done before all these new businesses opened up? How can I get a copy of that? And can I request a current survey for the parking? Because right now there are so many new businesses, especially the Savvy Salon that I brought to the city's attention that I knew was going to be a huge problem. It's to my understanding that the city owns 2 properties off of First Street that they're planning to build a parking lot in the summer of 2016. My concern is that you're going to close the Robin Hood Theater parking lot on the corner of First and Pine. That parking lot is always full. How is building the other parking lot going to solve any issues if you close the Robin Hood parking lot? The city's mission statement says that the city will provide services and infrastructure to support the highest quality of life for our residents, businesses, and visitors in a physically responsible manner. The infrastructure would be the parking. The responsible manner would be returning 3 phone calls or messages that I left. The lighting around my business and the side streets is not set up for nighttime walking, if that's how the city wants to say that it's a park and walk town. They took the time and money to put up posts and chains with no trespassing signs to prevent parking on the future lot instead of graveling it and helping us out. So I guess I'm asking for some kind of a solution to the problem, not creating more problems by chaining off areas and not having people be able to park. Thank you.
Thank you. So, staff, I think that she's also got some questions. Could we get back to her on, she had some specific items related to her business. Okay. Thank you for coming forward. Kim Young?
Sorry, twice in one night. Is this on? Yes. Okay. So just kind of as a follow-up to the previous, I just want to thank council for taking considerations of raising the rates of the Pride. And I agree, Pride gives great service. They're probably, do some sort of increase, but to look at it farther and give citizens options. I mean, $2 to my pocketbook might not be a big deal, but $2 to somebody else's, and $4 on water, and $5 on electric, and $3 on $20 a month to, somebody on a fixed income. And I know Sherwood's not the most affordable place to live, and we're trying to get my mom moved here, and I'm looking at her income, and, so it does add up. So I appreciate the council really taking that into consideration and sending it back to staff to bring some other options, whether that means reducing our services or not doing the 10%, but doing the 8%. And that was my question was, does the city have control over that 8 to 12? I understand Pride needs their rate, but what the city have a control over. So thank you.
All right, thanks. City manager report.
Mayor and Council, I have a couple items, just some updates. And this is more for the public. Council knows this. On Friday this past week, I received a notice of resignation from our finance director, Julie Blums. So she is no longer employed with the city of Sherwood as finance director. I've begun the process to identify an interim finance director as soon as possible. As you know, the budget process is about to begin in terms of the next few months in terms of putting our budget proposal together for the budget committee and council, and that's an important project. So getting an interim finance director in here as soon as possible is my primary task in the next week or two. And then we will also be starting the recruitment for a permanent replacement right away as well. And if we can get everything together, Tom and I are hoping to have that posted by the end of this week. So that's just an update more for the folks here in the room and folks that may be watching at home. Another thing that I've been hearing a lot of citizen questions on that I wanted to talk about briefly is the Arts Center retail space. We have been negotiating with a company to go into that space. That has gone on a little longer than I would have preferred. I'm meeting with that company next week, and it's going to come to a point very soon that either we're going to come to agreement on lease terms and move forward, or we're not. So I know there's a lot of interest in the community about that space. That space will be leased. The building is only about a year old, and I know it's frustrating to see space not leased in our old town, but as I use a comparison, the Graymore project, which has been open for far longer than the Arts Center and is out on 12th and Sherwood Road with a lot more volume, still has space to be leased. It takes time to find the right tenants and to negotiate a lease. And if this takes a little longer than everyone would like, I'd rather wait and get the right tenant in there. So that's kind of an update. We should know whether this is going to work in the next week or two with the tenant that we've been working with. So, Julia, did you want to talk a little bit about going forward on recreational marijuana? I'm going to put you on the spot.
No, that's fine.
In light
sort
of tonight's
thought
decision.
you might do that. I just wanted more remind the public, but also remind the council, because it's going to get a little confusing, even though you passed the ordinance to ban recreational marijuana and place it on the ballot, and that created a moratorium until the election. We don't want to have an election and then in the event that the ban fails, not have any code language in place. So we are actually going to begin the process Actually, next week, the Planning Commission has a work session to start talking about recreational marijuana facilities. In the event that it is not banned, we want to make sure that we have standards in place. So we'll try to continue to remind the public that there's sort of an either or, so it's not too confusing, but I wanted to make sure that that was understood, that over the next coming months there's going to be advertisements about, chiming in there, as well as an election going on the ballot. So.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Julia, I appreciate the forward-thinking nature, that we have to be ready for either decision, and that we're not going to just sit and wait. So that's great. I'm glad to hear that, so that we're ready to move forward when the decision of our citizens is made. So I think that's fantastic. I have to say that I'm really proud of this staff and this council for the approachability of people feeling like they can come forward, and even when it's a question that is not something that we handle here, that we can help our citizens navigate to the right place, so that they can get the help that they need. I think that that's the kind of city that I want to live in. I want to live in a city that if I just feel like I don't know where I have this issue, not that the city has to solve all my problems, but if I have something that like housing, that is just something that is beyond where I know where to go, that they can put me in the right place to help me go where I need to go to get the help I need. So
Mayor, I was going to ask you, that was a question I had. Is that something that council wants to try and address in the future or not?
I think that housing needs is definitely on the horizon for us to be discussing. So not that specific need, because we don't deal with landlord-tenant issues, but housing is. It is an issue, and I think it's definitely something that we're going to be looking at. Joe, you are shaking your head.
Yeah, and I think housing needs, the issue of affordable housing in the region and the state is,
I guess I'm thinking of City of Portland, because they do have certain rent ordinances. So
well, there's a lot of
I'm not
talk
sure.
about.
I know there's talk about it. I'm not saying
things,
that's something we want to bring up in the future or not.
And it may be something we can look into and decide that we're not going to go there, but I think it's worthy of a conversation. This is an expensive community. It's not getting any cheaper. I think there's a theme through a number of these issues, is that there are folks here that are struggling to be able to continue to live in this community because of the expensive living here.
My question is, does council want to have a conversation about, just about it? That's all. So.
And that you have your council retreat coming up and goal setting. That could be a project that you identify.
We'll talk about whether that's something that we want to bring forward. I'm going to be attending a housing summit that Metro is putting on to talk about housing specifically. It's a 4-hour summit that they're having at the end of the month. And so I will definitely be bringing that back to council, and possibly maybe even doing a work session with council to talk about and address the issue of housing in Sherwood. So yeah, I think that, I'm always open to all different kinds of ideas in dealing with the issues. So,
I had one other question for you,
Sure.
Joe. Can you give us an update what's going on as far as the contract thing with YMCA, the one you're going to have a finishing discussion?
Well, we're going to hopefully wrap up the ongoing negotiations about the specific section, which is Article 33.
Okay.
Our attorney, Josh Soper, has been meeting with the YMCA's attorney. We've got some draft language. I expect that to be on your agenda in February to approve that. That's clarifying language about outside users. I think that process has gone a little slower than we'd like, but it was also the holiday season, and I think we've come to some good language that the attorneys are now finalizing, and then ultimately has to come back to the council for approval,
right.
And then it has to go also to the YMCA's board for approval. So we're focused on Article 33. That's what we're trying to focus on, and then once we're done with that, then the question is, where do we go from there?
Okay. So. Probably address that in our planning meeting.
So.
Okay, so thank you. So on a happy note, oh gosh, heavens, now it was a couple weeks ago. We didn't really talk about at our last meeting the things that we had done in the last month because our meeting went quite long. But I wanted to kind of give a shout out to a grand opening that we had, and it was a reopening. It was a grand reopening, but it was on January 9th, and it was the U.S. World Class Taekwondo, and they had this great event, and I was unable to attend because I had a conflicting event, and Council President Harris went in my stead and surprised me greatly when the Master Michael Tornacasa presented me with something special, which was very unexpected, and so I just wanted to thank him. He gave me an honorary black belt and presented Mayor Christina Clark with an honorary black belt. And since, the election season is coming up, I just may need this. So, we'll be putting on the honorary black belt, and I don't even know how to put it on. So he's going to have to teach me how to put it on. But I thought that was pretty fantastic that this business is reinvigorating and adjusting and calling out for even more members. So I thought that was wonderful, and I wanted to give him a shout out and a thank you. Last month, the Chamber breakfast was with Senator Kim Thatcher and Representative John Davis. It was a very, very well-attended event, and they gave us an update on what's going to be coming forward in the short session. We've got a short session happening, and so just things to kind of keep us abreast of, and they'll be continuing to give us updates as the session comes along. And if you want to check that out, please go on and communicate with our senator and our state representative because the issues that they face at the state level trickle down to Sherwood. So again, we're not an island, so contact your representative and your senator and get involved. Last Wednesday, I attended Denny Doyle's State of the City address in Beaverton, and so I wanted to remind you that my State of the City will be at our next council meeting at 7 o'clock. We'll start the council meeting off with my State of the City, and I want to give a presentation on where we have come in the last year and where we're going in the year to come. So stay tuned. I hope that lots and lots of people are able to attend, but if you're not able to attend, it will also be live streamed as our council meetings are. And then we'll do what we did last year so that if you're not able to watch it at that time, that you are also able to click on it on our website and just listen to the State of the City so that you can hear the projections and also the recap of last year. I will be voting on transit in the Southwest Corridor Plan. I'm a member of the Southwest Corridor Planning, and so keep involved in watching what is happening in our transit. We're part of the Southwest Corridor. We are kind of the end of the road for the Southwest Corridor, so I have to speak loudly and often about the need for service to Sherwood for our residents that use transit, particularly our seniors, and they have been projecting increased services and changes in the routes so that we will be better served in Sherwood. And so I will continue to be part of that process and continue to be at the table for Sherwood. I'm also on the R1 Act 1 board, and that is a transportation board where we decide for the state where money comes from ODOT for projects all over. And we have a couple of projects that are on there. And so I'm hoping that we will be able to get some additional funding. That the project that is on there specifically is to help do some cleanup on Highway 99. And we made the proposal, even though it's not our highway, but by golly, it's in Sherwood, and we want it. So we made the proposal anyway. We did the work, and so I've got to give a huge shout out to Julia because it wasn't a City of Sherwood project. It was really a in the City of Sherwood project for ODOT. So thank you, Julia, for taking it by the horns and saying we want the money from ODOT to come to Sherwood. So I'm hoping that that's what the R1 Act 1 Council decides. Friday on January 22nd, I'll be on the radio show for KUIK 1360 at 8 a.m. for the Washington County Today. This is the second time that I've done it. It's kind of fun. And they will ask me questions, I think, about what we're working on and what we're projecting. So I look forward to hearing what they want to hear about this year, because they're a fun group. The council retreat, as Joe said, is January 30th on Saturday, 9 to 11 at the police station. And I am looking forward to hearing counselors and what they would like to work on in the future and our year to come. Councilor King?
I just want to remind folks that Sherwood Main Street will have their general meeting this Thursday morning at 8 o'clock over at the Rebecca Lodge. There's quite a few things they're planning that's coming up in town here, and that's St. Patrick's Day, another art walk, and I can't think of a couple other things. But anyway, it's at 8 o'clock on Thursday. They meet general meetings every third Thursday of the month. Right, Tom? Yes. So anyway, love to have you and all the businesses from Old Town come and join us. So thank you.
Council President Harris?
Yes. Oh, sorry, let me get it open. So I have some information about the library. I'm always come with information. Currently, the city is accepting applications for the library board. I'm a liaison to that board, which is why I tell you about it. And when you're on the board, you get to help with policies, procedures, planning, things like that. It's actually really fun. It's not a huge time commitment. It's every other month, except around budget time. There might be an extra meeting. But generally speaking, it's a very fun group, and we would love to have you. So you can go online and apply for that. Our Civic Center turned 10 years old, and they had a lovely party with Cat in the Hat and cake, and a fun thing to celebrate our building, which doesn't feel like it's been here that long, but time goes fast. And if you got some new technology for Christmas, maybe a new iPad or a new e-reader, and you're getting frustrated with it and starting to hide it in the drawer because you're so frustrated, you can bring those into the library and they will help you. So our librarians have answers about your technology, and they can help you load the proper apps and things like that and get you set up so that you can check out books at home. And I know for me, who turns my library books in late, always, yes, I fund the library single-handedly. These have been amazing. My kids, when we go to bed, they listen to stories on their music CDs and things, and we would listen to the same story over and over because I didn't get them back in time and check out a new one. And so with the e-reader app, we just go, when I've tucked them in bed, we just pull up their Nook and find our 3M app and check out a new book, and they get to listen to it. So in the last week, they've listened to 3 different books, which is fantastic because they're used to listening to the same book 3 times. So if you need some help getting that app on your new technology, or just in general some help with that, bring it into the library. They can help you. Also, I want to talk about the Reduce Food Waste program that they're sponsoring on Saturday the 23rd. Sorry, I have to pull up the right information for that one too. Let's see. So that's where you get to learn about the importance of food in our lives and the negative impact of when food gets wasted. I think this is a great topic today, specifically since we were just talking about recycling and trash and garbage. So you can go learn about the environmental impacts, social and economic impacts, all of that stuff. And that is September 23rd here at the library. And then they're also having a do-it-yourself craft with wearable art pins, and I saw them the other day when I was at the library, and they're super cute. So you can come on Thursday the 21st at 3:30 and make some of your own little arts and crafts, wearable pins, which is wonderful. And there are always lots of events at the library, so check out their link on our website. The Art Center, the classic film series, Some Like It Hot, was January 7th, and I did not see it, but I heard it was good. I haven't seen that movie at all, so one I should see. Let's see. The first gallery exhibit in 2016, the Sherwood Center for the Arts Gallery season, was Artful New Year. I have a hard time saying that. Artful New Year started January 15th and is still going on, so you can swing in there and check out all of the artists that have their things hung up in the gallery. And the Family Matinee series, they're having the Pirates this Saturday. I'm super excited about that. Saturday, January 23rd. The event time is 2 o'clock, and the cost is $5 per person, and it looks really fun. It's basically like, it looks like a pirate rock band. So, for kids and adults alike. That's all I have.
Very cool. Thank you, Council President. Councilor Henderson?
I'm still writing my notes down.
Councilor Browse?
So I too attended the martial arts grand reopening of the school, and as a martial artist myself, it's really fun to watch the young children. I think Gail's son is in the class as well, 5 or 6 years old, and watching the discipline that they have is amazing, and knowing that they have the potential of growing up to be great martial artists is fun to watch, and I can help you tie your belt. I figured something. So that was a lot of fun. I wanted to mention, we're very fortunate in this community to have 2 great service clubs in the Rotary Clubs, and there is an event coming up for the Old Town Rotary Club on February 6th called the Princess Promenade. And it's one of the ways that they're going to help fund their club and the service projects that they do. So it's for the basically fathers and the daughters, or grandpas and their granddaughters. It will be a great event to attend, and you can find that information on their website. And there's a lot going on in the chamber world. Mayor Clark talked about the last breakfast. The legislature's John Davis and then Senator Thatcher were both there with a lot of great information. Tomorrow there is a forum at the Stockpot, and it's the 2016 legislative review or reception. And with all the changes that are coming down the pike and for employers, it will be a great opportunity for us to learn what that will do to us potentially. So there's the ban the box law and the minimum wage issue. So it'll be a nice opportunity to ask questions and hopefully have some answers. Attended the school board last Wednesday, and yes, it was School Board Appreciation Month, so there was a lot of celebration of the school board. They also did a special grant award ceremony by the VPA. So the VPA handed out several awards to various teachers in the audience for the programs that they're offering. And it was also an update on the strategic plan. And according to the update, everything's going well in the school district, and it seems to be positive going forward. Lastly, there will be a water consortium meeting next Wednesday, and I imagine I'm going with Craig. I'm not sure, but we'll find out what's going on in the consortium. I think you're going to probably talk about the dessert, right? And that's all I have.
Okay. Although I won't be attending the Community Development Block Grant Cycle meetings because of our retreat, Kristen Schweitzer has volunteered to attend those meetings on my behalf, and I appreciate that. It's a significant commitment. It's an entire day of presentations, and that's all basically federal housing and urban development money that's then awarded to capital projects and social agencies and organizations, some private, some nonprofit, in Washington County, and it's a great process. We ourselves have been recipient of multiple community development block grants in the past. So that is is happening this month, and the scoring is on the day of our retreat. So I want to thank Joe for having Kristen substitute for me. A couple of things you mentioned, the VPA. The VPA is doing a junior version of Riki Tiki Tavi, which is adapted from the Jungle Stories of Rudyard Kipling, and it is on. There are two performances Saturday, June 30th at the high school at 1 and 5:30, and the admission is only $5. And then lastly, as part of the police analysis study, they are, of course, soliciting information. I think we're always willing to take information from our citizens about how our police department is serving us and any ideas that members of our community might have. So on January 28th, which is a Thursday at 7 p.m., again at the Sherwood Center for the Arts, gives new meaning to if you build it, they will come. And that is at 7 o'clock, and it's your opportunity to give feedback with dessert. That's always good. And have a conversation regarding the direction and future of our Sherwood Police Department. And so I hope if folks have time, they can stop in and at least give some feedback verbally or in writing. Anything to add, Chief? Nope. Okay. Oh,
sure.
Sorry.
I just want to add as a component of that and seeking additional feedback, there's going to be a online survey that's going to be coming out here probably tomorrow, and we'll be collecting those for the end of the month as well. So there's another opportunity if you can't make it to the dessert, but love to see everybody who can.
Thank you, Tom.
And the staffing study, because that's another thing that I've been getting a lot of questions from folks. When's that going to be done? We anticipate that being done in early February. And I think there'll probably be a work session at some point with the council to talk through the results of that study and the recommendations that are contained. So soon, we're almost there.
All right. Thank you. We are adjourned. You know, it's hilarious. I was like, you came out of the bag, and I'm like, okay, I know it's got to go around many times because holy crap.
First thing, don't ever let it